This is our meeting of the Cumberland County Board of Elections. Today is November 3rd, 2022, 1 hour, 10 a.m. So we will begin the meeting with a roll call of members present, please.
Commissioner Eichelberger.
Present.
Commissioner Quashie.
I'm here.
Commissioner DiFilippo.
Present. Okay, very good. All right, I think as most of you know, we have opportunity for public comment on the agenda every meeting, and arrived at that. Just a couple of things. We have a nice crowd. Thank you for being here. Welcome your interest. We also have some folks online. What I would like to do today is, I think sometimes the folks online get shorted a little bit, and because I know a few have ended their calls before they had the opportunity in the past. So I'd like to start with them today. Anybody listening, if you're here for public comment, we'd ask you to indicate, I guess with a raised hand if you're on Zoom. We'll be calling every individual who's listed, or the number if it's a phone number, but any indication you can give us is helpful. I will call out whatever identifying tag we have, and we'll give you a few seconds to try to unmute, but please be at the ready. We're going to start with the remote attendees first. And just as a reminder, anybody speaking, we ask you to identify yourself. Hopefully, if you haven't already signed the sign-in sheet, maybe you could hit that on the way out or whatever. It helps us a great deal because we want to record who's here. We want to do it accurately. So when you stand to speak, identify yourself. If you're a resident, the municipality is helpful for us to know. If you have an affiliation with a particular organization, we ask you to identify that if you're comfortable doing that. And we typically allot 3 minutes per individual. That time is able to be extended by the chair at discretion. So try to make this as user-friendly as possible. And we do need to keep moving too as well, because we do a little amount of business. So with that, we will undertake item 3, the public comment. And do we have any of the remote folks who have raised their hand?
Joe Bitzer.
Okay, Ms. Bitzer, you're up first.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we have you now. Go ahead.
Okay, my name is Joe Bitzer. I'm from Upper Allen Township. I'm just calling with regards to the Upper Allen Township newsletter that went out that was full of voter misinformation. I would like to thank Bethany for being in touch with them and correcting that misinformation. I have requested that they do a robocall because people are not going to know the information is incorrect. They have refused to do that, which I find very concerning. 2 of the most egregious things that they printed was that you have to register in person to vote, or that you have to, if you have not voted at least once during the last 2 calendar years, you have to re-register and you can't vote. And both of those things are wrong. We have 14,500 registered voters in Upper Allen Township. And the number that would be affected by that, if you haven't voted at least once during the last 2 calendar years, would affect 4,000 voters. And I am very concerned that people will be disenfranchised by this misinformation. And I just was wondering that somebody can do to you request a robocall.
Joe, you keep waning in and out.
Pardon me?
Yeah, the audio is fading in and out, and so we're not getting a reliable signal now. Give you another couple of seconds to see if you can wrap that up, but I think we got the gist. We're very familiar with the situation. So
yeah, I'm not sure what I can do about the audio. Bethany's aware of the situation. I just really wanted it to be on public record that this is happening in Upper Allen.
Okay, I think we got all of that now. So it'll be on the record, obviously reported in our minutes. And we are familiar with it. And are we planning to address it actively, or maybe you can give us an update now or at some point on your updates?
Yeah, so Joe had sent me an email listing all kind of what you talked about here, but in more detail, in her conversations with the township and trying to get them to correct this. in a more thorough manner than just updating their website. And I forwarded that on to the BOE just so you had that information. We were in contact with the township the very day that the first person got the newsletter in the mail, trying to get them to correct things and get it updated. What they're doing with that at this point, I mean,
Right.
I'm not sure what we can do, but yeah, we were aware of it and had it corrected, at least online. Of course, we can't correct the paper ones that were already mailed, but online right away. But we have had multiple calls from people in Upper Allen concerned about this, rightfully so.
Keith, do we have, as a DOE, do we have any authority over this matter?
No. The only thing you could do is ask Upper Allen to address it in some way. You can't tell them to do.
Okay, but we could ask.
You could ask.
Have you had any contact with Upper Allen?
I have. I talked to a few different people at the township. Obviously, the very first day we heard about it and we called. We corrected the information with them over the phone, and then I received a phone call later with more questions in regard to the issue of having to re-register after 2 years. I'm not sure where they got that information, and so we were trying to talk through that, but I did not say to them, I mean, I didn't give them any direction as far as what they should be doing with their township residents or anything like that. So no, I haven't. And I haven't talked to anyone in probably a week or so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think we're prepared to move on to,
We have just somebody on name with the initial CM.
okay, CM, is that Caroline Charaju? I believe she's phoned in before. If I'm wrong, please correct me, but the initial CM are all we see. And now's your opportunity for comment or question.
Unknown caller.
Mute. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we had it. Could you confirm for us your identity, please?
Yes, Caroline Macharaju. I'm from Camp Hill. And first, I just wanted to start off saying thank you for opening this meeting to the public. I think this wave of interest we are seeing across our county and across the whole country is a good thing. We are all here because we care about our elections, which is what election integrity is. So thank you for that. My first item is to follow up on the email I sent you all, showing the results of a cross-analysis of voters who are actively still registered in Cumberland County, but have filed a permanent out-of-state change of address form using the National Change of Address System, also known as NCOA. And this is the same data that's used by Eric. The file that I sent shows there are 62 people that no longer live in our state that have registered, and many have already returned a mail-in ballot as of October 28th. The analysis filtered out temporary, seasonal, and military categories. I am asking if those 62 ballots belonging to out-of-state voters can be temporarily set aside, unopened, until these people are verified as eligible to vote in Cumberland County. Certainly, we recognize that glitches happen, innocent mistakes happen, etc., but double checking their eligibility is a safeguarding step. And let me bring your attention to these specific points, if I may. PA Title 25, Section 1901 B1 mandates counties use NCOA data to clean its rolls. So this is acceptable information by law. Review of these registrations are not covered by the quiet must be complete 90 days prior to an election for annual maintenance within PA Title 25, Section 1901, because this is not annual maintenance. I am bringing to your attention these 62 specific people who have stated to the federal government they no longer live in Pennsylvania. And in subsection 4, it further states, this paragraph does not preclude cancellation and correction of registration records. And lastly, on this topic, the obligation of the BOE to investigate this issue is spelled out in Act 25, Section 2645, to investigate election frauds, irregularities, and violations of this act, and to report all suspicious activity to the district attorney. So again, if these 60 have been verified as being eligible to vote, when were the notices mailed to verify they have addresses in the county? And if this information is not readily available, I ask that you would set aside these ballots until they can be verified as residing in our Commonwealth. And if I could have a couple seconds, I did have 2 other points I wanted to follow up from my remarks at the last meeting. Bethany shared with me in an email that the Bureau of Elections receives monthly reports directly from the Department of Health on deceased voters. So I was glad to see that Doris Hummer and Blair Bowling, who both died in 2015, have been recently removed. They were reflected on the June voter rolls. So my question is, are deceased people promptly and permanently removed, or are they switched to inactive status for any length of time? And lastly, what happens to people with dementia? I have to share a door knocking experience I've had this past weekend where I visited a voter whose mail-in ballot was already sent. I still thought I'll knock and say thank you. But instead, I was greeted by the caregiver who was very forthcoming and shared that the woman had dementia for 7 to 8 years. The caregiver said, honey, you may want to take her off your list. I don't want to do that, but my question as a result is, does the BOE also receive any reports from the Department of Health on individuals deemed mentally incompetent to vote? If so, are they also monthly, like the deceased voters? And for the commissioners, at what point is this something that should be looked into or investigated? Should I follow up with any of you and provide this individual's name? Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you for your comments. We did receive the email. I know Bethany has received it. As you're aware, we're in the final phase of preparations. I'm not sure where that stands now. I'm going to allow Bethany, if you're ready, to address any and all of those issues that you're prepared today to address.
Sure. So as you stated, we are preparing for an election. We are only days out. So as you can imagine, we are extremely busy. However, I did look at the 62 names that we were given once we received the correct file. And a third of the people on this list, 25, are military voters who live out of state and receive ballots because this is their home of residence. 11 of them are college students whose home of residence is here, but go to college elsewhere. And so they received a ballot at their college address. 9 have it duly noted on their absentee ballot application that they work out of state, but their home of residence is here. 4, we sent an NCA to, and they did not respond. However, they did apply for a mail-in ballot and received their ballot. 6 of those who were, 11 of those also are not part of the NCA process at all, which means we have not received word from the post office that they have moved or have a change of address. And in fact, their ballots were sent to their home address in Pennsylvania. So that's where that stands. So all are in good standing as far as the registration and the process is concerned, and a third of them are military voters. That's that process. And if I'm remembering, I don't want to forget anything. We do receive reports from the Department of Health every single month at the beginning of each month, but those are voters who die in Pennsylvania. So if someone went to a nursing home or to a family, go to be taken care of by family out of state and they die out of state, we do not get notifications because the Department of Health is a Pennsylvania organization. So the voter has to die in Pennsylvania for us to get notification of it. So those people, for example, the 2 people that she mentioned from 2015, they were inactive and they were in the process of being canceled because they have not had any activity on their record, obviously because they're deceased in those years, but they died out of state. So that's we get the information from the people from Pennsylvania. And then the last thing I'm trying my brain.
It's about dementia.
Yes, so the only thing I can say about that is that if someone is deemed incompetent by a judge, that does not mean that they cannot vote. It is not related to voting in any sense of the word. You cannot take someone's right to vote away because of that. So that's part of the law, Pennsylvania law. If anyone would like that changed, this is not the venue for that. So
That's a legislative fix.
yes, correct. Yep.
All right.
Okay.
Can I just follow up with that a little bit? So I believe what Mrs. Mataraju stated was that her list included it cleaned out the people who were military, et cetera. So somebody.
not.
so-
Yeah.
Okay.
Nope.
Not sure what source of information she may have, but that's obviously a point of disagreement here. So, but your information is that.
Directly from the shore system where they file. Yep,
Okay.
where they file for their mail-in
Additional-
absentees.
An additional question. So those individuals who are declaring residence here and are voting here, even though they may be out of state a lot, what protections exist to ensure that they are not filing a ballot in the other place where they are resident, where they are not resident, but where they are?
Where they live during, like, if they're working
Whether or not
out of
they're
state or things
snowbirds
like
or
that. Well, so the ERIC process, which she mentioned, is finally a federal program that connects state to state. We've never had a system like that, so that's how we're really starting to finally get some more information from out of state voters or out of state people. It only used to, everything always was just contained in Pennsylvania previous. And just in the last few years, finally, states are connecting with each other in a better way to make sure that we're all talking to each other about who's registered where and what's happening. So it's in process. It's a work in progress. It's getting better and better each year that we're using it and that more states are joining. So it's a thing that a state has to join. So if a state chooses not to join the ERIC program, then they're not part of it. Pennsylvania is part of it. So we've really had so much better information in the last few years. And obviously, like we always said, it's the voters' responsibility to let us know if they're no longer living in this state. I mean, yes, we have processes in place, but it's also some personal responsibility on the voters' part to let us know.
So with this new sharing system that's
Yeah.
integrated, is there, are we going to be able to identify potential problems that may have existed where someone has been in the past, perhaps receiving a ballot in 2 different places?
We could identify, if another state says, hey, so-and-so is registered here now. That kind of thing, their registration and where they're registered. That's what we're able to do now. I'm sure as things progress, it will be even more detailed and more kind of granular.
It's fairly new, so it's.
Yeah, just the last couple of years we've had ERIC. Yep.
All right. That's, I think everything I have on that. Before we move on, I forgot to mention, it was mentioned, I think, by the first caller. This is because of the level of interest in these issues. This is the first time we have added Board of Elections onto our live web stream and our web archive. So anyone who's unable to attend or, whatever reason, will have access to all the information as well. So that was a decision of the Board of Elections just recently. And it's there now for everybody and anybody to either go back to or to catch the live stream and participate how they see fit. So thanks to our IT people for making that happen.
Okay, Bethany.
Yeah.
This list of 62 registered voters that you received, all 62 are accurate, correct?
Yes.
So you verified information that was already accurate.
Yes.
How much time did you have to spend doing it?
It was close to an hour yesterday.
Well, thank you for doing that. There's a million other things to do to deliver a fair, accurate, and reliable election.
Okay, I think we're ready to move on. Next call.
We have last 4 numbers is 5515.
Okay, telephone number ending in 5515. Feel free to unmute yourself if you and please identify yourself.
Charlie Wilson.
I was going to say something.
Yeah.
Okay,
Hello.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes, hello, good morning.
Yes.
I'm just listening into the meeting but I do want to tell you that I appreciate the work of this board and the work of the Bureau. I think you're doing a wonderful job to keep elections in Cumberland County safe. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wilson. Always appreciate your attendance. Okay, so we have
Nobody else has.
nobody else on. Okay, that brings us to the room. So I would ask if you want to comment, just remember, identify yourself, 3 minutes roughly, and I try to be generous with that as able. So just I guess, raise a hand and I'll identify. I see Mr. Cobb looks like he's interested. So.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to read in order to stay on track in a short time limit. Thank you, Honorable Commissioners and Director Salzerlo for reviewing the proposal that the Cumberland County Election Integrity Task Force submitted on October 21st, suggesting a revision of the audit process in the county. I believe all aspects of the elections are well done in our county, but as that proposal illustrated, 70% of Democrats and 78% of Republicans are concerned with election security. Therefore, reinforcing trust is critical for our county and the republic. And there's no wonder why there are concerns. In addition to President Biden extending the national emergency declaration on election infrastructure a few weeks ago, prominent politicians, since at least 2000, have claimed fraud and theft and all sorts of things. The hanging chads are the first one that I remember. That was in 2000, and those were numerous allegations of fraud by Vice President Gore, as well as the cries and the shouts of a stolen election in 2016 by Secretary Clinton, and echoed by pretty much all of the Democratic Party leadership. And there's so many instances, but I won't repeat those. In May of 2019, Democratic Senator Biden from Oregon introduced a PAVE Act protecting American votes and elections, along with 14 Democrat colleagues. It mandated hand-marked paper ballots, and on his website, he shares a range of quotes, but I'll just share a few to be brief. Senator Wyden said the PAVE Act scraps insecure voting machines that are juicy targets for hackers and replaces them with reliable, secure, hand-marked paper ballots. Senator Elizabeth Warren. This bill takes important steps to maintain the integrity of our democracy by mandating the use of paper ballots and post-election audits. And then Senator, now Vice President Kamala Harris. I'm proud to join my colleagues in introducing this legislation because paper ballots are the single best way to secure our elections. Foreign governments can't hack a piece of paper. And so then lastly, also on Senator Wyden's site was Stacey Abrams' comments from Georgia. Unfortunately, across the country and in Georgia, too many voters must depend on unreliable, hackable voting machines to try to make their voices heard. And so with rhetoric like this, it shouldn't be a surprise that both sides of the aisle have concerns about our elections. And to blame one group or another is really kind of a specious argument and unfair. So for those here today that may not be familiar with the proposal, I'll be very, very brief, just a few seconds. It's to help citizens of the county and all parties recognize that our Cumberland County elections are secure and accurate. It's achieved by allowing both parties and the commissioners to select precincts after election day to be hand counted for all races. This means that no one knows in advance which few precincts will be audited, and as all ballot types, mail, absentee, and in person, are hand counted for those precincts, there's no avenue that can be exploited without detection. It also asks, the proposal also asks that these audits be conducted transparently and with party involvement so that no one can doubt they are accurate. Similar precinct level audit processes are in place in Mercer and Fulton, and just last week were approved by York County. The proposal asks for 12 precincts, 10% over 118, to be hand counted for all ballot types, and this is in excess of the mandatory 2% audit required by the Commonwealth. We recommend this proposal be used in place of that 2% mandate. And so if 10% is too much, too time consuming, or too costly, I ask you to vote for and approve whatever number of precincts you can justify to reinforce the trust of our county citizens. On behalf of the Cumberland County Election Integrity Task Force, we thank you.
Mr. Cobb. Next. Mr. Milkus had his hand up first, so go with that.
My name is Sam Milkus, North Milton Township. And I just would like to respond to Mr. Cobb's proposal. I had the opportunity many years ago in Cumberland County to observe a hand counting of ballots. It was an extremely time-consuming, error-prone event that required repeated reviews of, well, how do we read this name? Or I counted this number and she counted that number. How do we resolve that? I want to first suggest that the hand counting of ballots is not nearly the accurate way to do it as opposed to the machine counting. The observations about people applauding paper ballots, that was, so there actually was documentation of the vote, but it wasn't that they were being hand counted. This is not an audit process that's being proposed. It's a random way of selecting certain precincts or certain voters by the parties, which to me is going to raise even more flags. People are going to wonder, why did the Democrats want this one? Why did the Republicans want that one? We're only doing 10%. What about the other 90%? I would suggest that this proposal is just going to lead to more people being suspicious of the outcome. There are people who are suspicious of the voting process, but Mr. Cobb started by praising the process in Cumberland County. And I suggest that the way to instill confidence is not to bring about a new process that's going to have its own underlying concerns, but for the parties to join together in this county, the various representatives of the various factions to meet together and proclaim their confidence in the voting process in Cumberland County. The machines were just tested last week. The test results show a perfect alignment of votes cast. They're not online machines. The votes cast as compared to what we know were the votes cast as compared to what was actually counted. I have a good many friends in this room, people I know on both sides of the aisle. This is not personal, I don't think, for anybody, but it is a proposal that I think is going to take us backwards in confidence, and there are ways to instill some confidence by our joining together as a community. Thank you.
Okay. Get another hand up back here.
I just wanted to concur with what the gentleman just said. There's only paper ballot counting is rife with error. And you do have paper ballots available for voters to see when they cast their ballot. So I think it's a waste of taxpayer money
Could I ask you for the record to identify
for Upper Allen Township.
and your name?
Carol Yorkins.
All right. Next speaker.
I'm Lois Kanashiki, Hampton Township, and I respectfully disagree with Mr. Milkus. I think that audits are important, and one way to address some of the concerns that he had was that if you could have a hybrid system of audits where the precincts that are selected are requested by voters in those precincts, and in order to audit those precincts, they will have to be present for the audit personally. That way, you know, you have interest. Anybody from the precinct can come and observe the audit. It should be an open, you know, just like these public meetings. And right now, voters have the legal right to challenge or to audit their precinct anyway. We already have the legal right. A lot of people aren't aware of it, but this would be a way to address it. Say, okay, we're going to do it and we're going to do the audit, but we're going to select it by precincts where there is specific interest. So if voters don't have interest in auditing their precinct, why should we audit it? So let the voters decide which precincts to audit, so you can collect that information, then from that pool, you can randomly select 12 precincts if you're going to do 10%. I don't think 10% is too high of a number. I think it's a good number. So I think that would address Mr. Milkus's objections. So I'm in favor of an audit and also precinct and election reconciliation. My understanding is before you certify the vote, the votes have to be reconciled, so that also helps instill confidence. We still have issues from prior elections in many counties where the votes do not reconcile, and that's an issue, and we haven't been able to resolve that, and that harms a lot of morale of our voters. So we don't want that situation in Cumberland County. It can be avoided. And I'm a fan of paper ballots, but at the same process, I think if we go back to paper ballots, it's on condition that we have voter participation, that we have people from the precincts that are there to assist and to observe. And yes, time consuming, but if that helps instill voter confidence, I'm all for it. And a lot of people just do not trust the voting machines, and we as a community have not done a good job to address their concerns, frankly. Otherwise, they would have confidence in the voter machines. So that, and then one other issue I would like to discuss is apparently there are 6,000 registrations coded in the SURE system that are unverified and that they have been sent ballots. And so we would like to know how that will be addressed. And if the non-verified ballots, the mail-in ballots will be segregated, separated from the verified mail-in ballots. Thank you.
All right. There was a lot in there. I appreciate that, but I think the one thing that probably we should address, we are familiar with the issue of the unverified ballots. And there's a lot of confusion around that. Do you want to address that today in any form or any place on the agenda?
If you would like me to, I'd be more than happy to right now.
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
So I actually brought copies, clearly not enough. If anyone has not seen yet, the Secretary's State's response to Representative Ryan. There was much misinformation in the letter that he wrote to the Secretary about this. They're not unverified ballots, they're unverified applications for a ballot. Ballots have not been mailed to those people. So that is an inaccuracy. Also, she states in this letter that she doesn't even know where he got this 260,000 number from that was statewide. But again, they're applications, they're not ballots that have been mailed. So that's a very big distinction that was missed. So I have copies of this letter. I only have 10, so you can feel free to just, I don't know, you can fight over them or we can make more. I'm not sure what you want. But they're also, it's also, I think, on the state's website as well. But that answers all the questions in great detail for you. So please feel free to read that.
If anybody did not get a copy, we'll be happy to supply. So.
I think you can find them online. Also, they're on the state's website, but. Okay. All right. It's a meeting or master copy.
Okay, other public comment. Sorry.
Troy Bean, Hopewell Township. I got a question about another comment here. The 62, were they automatically mailed out, the ballots, or are they requested?
No ballots are ever automatically mailed out. We have to have an application for every ballot that goes out. Yep.
All right, thank you. I had that prior. I disagree with the young man sitting here. Anyway, there's much controversy around the machines. We all know that. There's plenty of evidence out there that these machines are tampered with and can be tampered with. I submitted affidavits in here. I submitted them several different times. And with the computer programmer, we had a computer programmer hack here last time. And I just want to bring the attention to this board of what's happening in Brazil right now. I don't know if you're following or not, but exactly what Clint Curtis had said, the votes were 49-51. And that's one thing that they were already checking into, and God help us that they get those machines, but that's electronic down there too. And there's much controversy over them machines. And I think the only way to verify that, if people check in the paper, and I want to encourage everybody, and I'm going to do that, make sure your ballot that prints out on that machine is accurate to what you want. Because if it's not, then you need to make an issue of it. Because if it is, and then we do this audit and it's hand counted, that's to verify, because according to the computer programmer, that tabulator that you're using, it's always going to come out with what the machine printed. Not what it printed, but what it tabulated to the count to be, because there's unseen to the human eye on them ballots as to how the count was counted and how it was manipulated. It's in the affidavit. I gave this board a copy of it. You can read it for yourself. You can read it from him. You can listen to what he had to say about it. It was both parties that has an issue now. It was a Democratic Party then, now it's a Republican Party now. So there's an issue with the machines, a big issue. And I just want to say that the audit would be a way to verify, is the machine and the tabulator counting actually what was voted? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Mr. Custer.
I'm Laszlo Pastor from Carlisle. I'm a state committee man for the Republican Party, and I appreciate Mr. Milkus's concern. He's right. If we do an audit of any sort, it's going to be an effort. I agree. It will be. We do the mandatory already. So we're asking for an increase. The other point he made, and I understand the point, is that if both parties would say that we do trust the system, that would help alleviate some of the distrust. I would hope that it would, but my experience, having had to answer a lot of phone calls indicating distrust, is it did not alleviate it, regardless of how much we stood up for what we thought was a legitimate system. And everybody here that's spoken has says that we trust the system. Having said that, that is not convincing to many people. And I'll just tell you that as a matter of experience. The issue is that each of us in here is concerned for integrity. We want our system to be fair and above board. We also have to understand there's a difference between malfeasance and misfeasance. One is intentional fraud to do wrong, legal wrong. And there are fines and jail terms if they're prosecuted. Then there's misfeasance. There are administrative anomalies. There are systems, there are parts of the system which can be taken advantage of. And Bethany and I have discussed this. I'm not going to say them publicly, but there are ways to cheat. She knows them. I know them. I would recommend the commissioners carefully consider doing what they can within the ability to do it, that we would foster trust. The things that we have come up with here today, the concerns and the addresses to them, as Bethany's given good answers, be publicized. So we need to get the information out to the public, newspapers, et cetera, statements on your site. The issue with Hampton, well, we can talk to the township, certainly. That's a good thing. We need to publicize our answer. I am asking that you all consider doing whatever you can to garner more trust. And if that takes extra effort, do it.
Gentlemen, I'm Zerkovitz.
Yeah, Upper Allen, I didn't say before. I just have a question that might clarify things a little bit. What do the 2% audits show as far as the reliability of the results? Are we having some issue with that then would say we need to do 10%? I don't think so.
Bethany, would you mind speaking to the audits that are part of the process already?
So as part of the election code, we're required to do what's called a 2% statistical sample. And that's a random sample of 2% of the votes cast or 2,000 votes, whichever is less. And then we are also required by the Department of State to do what's called a risk limiting audit, which is a random sample of votes cast in one or more randomly selected races. And that's facilitated by the Department of State. They tell us which races, because they do a kind of a random seed drawing at a state level. And then they tell the counties which areas, and that amount recounted is based on votes cast. So some years, as you can imagine, it's not as many ballots as other years. So for example, this year, it would be quite a few ballots because votes cast would be much higher turnout for this year. So we actually are only required to do one by law, and then the state would like us to do an additional one. So we actually do 2 audits and have never had any issues with any audits as long as I've been here, which is 18 years. We also, the last 2 elections, did 2 full recounts of the entire county for 2 statewide offices that came back exactly perfect, except for a couple of paper ballots, because as I've stated before, people don't know how to fill in ovals correctly. So there is some questions sometimes on those ballots of was that a vote for this person or was that a vote for that person? or extraneous marks on paper ballots because things just aren't as clear on those, but that was less than 10 if you recall. So anyway, that's what we do every time, all the time.
Denise, since you've been here, have we ever had an unreconciled election?
No, we were able to reconcile it by the time certification, and the only year I'm talking about is 2005 when we did the hand count of Carlisle office. And it just took us a little more time, but otherwise, always.
Was that MDJ?
Yes.
Can I have a point of clarification?
Sure, Mr. Lancian, so
Were those recounts done by hand?
Which recounts? The one from the last 2 years?
Risk limited audit and the other one that we talked.
No, so the requirement by the Department of State is that it's done by another method than what was done on election night.
So they were done by machines.
Correct. Because the requirement by law is that it's just done by a different method.
And I think that's our problem, machines.
Is it done by a different machine? You have
Yes.
two different machines?
Yep. The paper ballots that you view in your window on your Excel, those paper ballots are then removed from the Excels and they're run through our 850 scanners. And then our 850, the absentee and mail-in ballots that go through our 850 scanners are then run through a different type of scanner for the recount.
And what brand of?
It's the same company. We can't use uncertified voting equipment.
So it's all ESNS.
Yeah, we can't use uncertified voting equipment, so.
Yeah, that's the problem.
let me follow up with one question on that. So Bethany, we do the public test, which I believe you did
Yes,
last week.
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Could you describe briefly what that process is? Because what I'm hearing is, the ballot producing machine is somehow connected to the ballot counting machine so that the numbers automatically. Doesn't the test provide for some other sample so that it's independent of the machine or?
We literally perform an election night is what we do from start to finish. So we obviously need to make sure all the machines that go out on election day, and of course, all the machine and all the scanners that count the mail-in and absentee ballots are counting correctly. So for the 850, for the mail-in and absentee ballots, we have what's called a test deck that we mark ourselves so that we know what the expected outcome should be when we run them through the scanner. Okay, so we do that for those.
That's not done on the machines.
Well, we hand mark them.
You hand mark
Yes,
them.
we
so
hand mark
so the
them,
counting
correct.
method is.
Right, and then we put
completely
them,
machine process.
right, we hand mark the test, we hand mark the test deck. And then that's run through the scanner, and then we make sure that what we hand marked is what is coming out on the scanner. Then with the actual voting machines that go to the polling place, we also know what we are voting on them to make sure that it comes out properly. So you don't call it hand marking, because of course we're touching a screen, but we know what we're supposed to be voting so that we can see what the result is to make sure it's counting accurately
So you do basically a hand vote.
on everything,
And then
correct,
also do a machine vote.
right,
There's
so
there's
we,
no counting though of the ballots, right? She's saying it's all counted by the machine.
correct, but we voted them and we know what the vote is, so let's say
It's totally separate from the
it's
machine.
totally separate from the machine, we are voting them, like, we vote them. We know what we voted and what the outcome is supposed to be. We check the results from the machine and make sure that they match what we voted.
You mean the test?
In the test, correct, it's called a public test. And that was open to the public and people were there. And that's what we do. So we vote them by hand. We check all the machines are accurately counting what we hand voted. Yep, that's what the public test is.
How big a sample is that when you?
So we do every single voting machine, and then we do a test deck, which is depending on the size of the ballot, the amount of candidates, that determines the size of the test deck. So the more candidates, the more vote fors, the test deck gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah, so.
All right.
Is it 500 or?
It depends on the ballot. So this time it was almost 1,000 ballots. A municipal year like next year where we'll have 2 different ballot faces and potentially could be 700 to 800 candidates. You're talking about thousands upon thousands of a test deck. So
When
it
you
just
do the
it's
real-
based on
You
candidates.
do the real live, like say after November 8th, you'll take a test deck of 1,000 ballots and you'll actually say, here's how they voted, and you'll run it through and see if the machine's.
It's
counting.
not a, No, we take the actual ballots from election day.
Yeah, you have an actual election.
They're not a test stack.
Right.
It's a random 2% sample of people who voted that day, their ballots.
And you check
And
those
we
by
will-
hand against the machine.
No, we count them. We take the people's hand marked ballots, or I should say, or hand touched, depending on which method. And then we run them through the machine to make sure what's there is what.
So in other words, the public test, you've tested the machine and its accuracy
Correct.
in preparation of putting the machine ballots through later.
Right, so what we do on the public test is exactly what voters do every election day. We touch the screen, we vote the ballots, we fill in the ovals, we do all the things, just like you all do on election day. And then we run them through the scanner to make sure that the result that we voted is what is coming out of that machine.
Right, but I understand that's a test, but the actual day of voting, you don't do any real hand counting, sit down there and say, you know, I voted for John Doe, and you add them up and run that through the machine. You don't do that hand count. That's what we're talking about here.
I understand, we do not do a hand count. The requirement is to count them by a different method.
Okay, that answered my questions. Technically, there shouldn't be an act of back and forth, but Mr. Lencioni, I know you've been interested in this and didn't give you a chance to.
Yes, I'm not sure. People have been talking about the machines being tested. I went up twice now for the logic and accuracy test at the courthouse. And I was just there, I guess was it last week? I don't know. I thought it was longer than that. But in any event, what I wanted to say was I thought I went up as an observer to observe what took place. And I was in a hallway. And the machines were at least 6 feet away from me. Most of them were more than 10 feet away from me. I could not see anything. This is twice I've gone up there. I think transparency is very important. And my definition of observer is that you watch closely what is going on. I wasn't allowed to watch closely what is going on. And I'm not saying that's Cumberland County. I don't know if that's the Department of State or what it is, but I did get to watch the hallway. And it's very clean. But as far as watching that test, I didn't see anything except for some machines in a room. I asked if I could have like a printout from the machine to tell me what's going on. And I was said to call up the next day and should let me know if the machines passed the test or whatever happened.
That's a good wrap up.
So in any event, what I want to say is we use these words like we tested the machines. Well, if it's the logic and accuracy test, it showed nothing. It showed me nothing.
Let me just add something. I mean, we do have a requirement that observers have to be kept, I believe, a physical distance.
They can't be in the room where the voting machines are happening.
So we're bound by that. I think also it's worth mentioning that, I mean, what you're stating, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it essentially is you're not comfortable with having to trust the election staff to do it. So.
No, I trust that she had a list of things there. I don't know if it came from the Department of State. You can't have a cell phone.
Right.
These are elections. Transparency is important. That's why I'm here today. You folks are transparent. I think Bethany tries to be transparent, but this election stuff is not transparent. Once you put that vote in the machine, you don't know what's going on.
I have to correct you on that because that is why the paper ballot is generated so that people can confirm that what they punched in is what shows up here. I hear what you're saying about, well, what happens to this piece of paper? And the question of counting, I think, has been addressed, maybe not to everybody's satisfaction. But I will recount one story. I don't want to hijack this, but to Mr. Cobb's point, I will tell you, as somebody who was here before, when we went through this adoption of machinery in the past, I had an objection because there was not a paper backup. There was no means of verification. I believe that was under the Rendell administration. And Mr. Pedro Cortez, in his first round as Secretary of the Commonwealth, sat in this room and called me a crackpot because I said, how do you verify if you don't have a paper backup? So now, at least this time around, under the Wolf administration, they have stated, and I'm pleased with this, that machines will not be certified or eligible for counties to buy unless they provide that paper backup. That gave me great confidence personally, as one, that the system that's adopted has about as much safeguard as you can possibly expect of a mechanical system. And I think the verifications that have been done over the years back that up. So I just wanted to mention that because it does go to Mr. Cobb's point that, Mr. Pedro Cortez, round one, called me a crackpot for asking for paper backup. Round two, Mr. Pedro Cortez insisted, as his bosses stated at the time, that we had to have paper backup he was wrong one time, he was right the other time. But it does go to the point of it's not being uniformly handled as a public issue. And frankly, shame on the Commonwealth for that. So I think a lot of the distrust has come out of the handling of the elections by the Department of State over the years. So we certainly need them to do their part. I think their people in general are trying to do that, but I think there's a lot of confusion around the process. And some of the flip-flops we've seen in the past few years from the Department of State have not helped with that. I just wanted to add that as my 2 cents. So
I'd like to just add to that. The reason for the paper backup ballot on a machine in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is because of litigation. It was part of the Wolf administration's settlement with the Green Party and the Jill Stein campaign. That's why that exists. That's why all of those new machines had to be purchased in 2019. I have certainly appreciated everything that the Election Integrity Group has had conversations with me about. And I certainly have sat and listened to you. And I'm just going to reiterate this to you one more time. Most of what you're asking for, I'm going to go as far to say all of what you're asking for, requires a legislative fix. So these conversations need to be happening at the state level. You have to go and see your delegation. You have to go see the person who is your representative, the person who is your senator. That's how this is going to happen. If you want these changes, you have to go and do those things. And Mr. Lencioni, I agree with you. I find it very frustrating, right, that you have to stand back, right, and view those machines from far away. But I believe that's the law. I mean, we can't. I've said this before. I will say it again. We cannot put those machines in jeopardy. The very moment that Bethany is a nice person, or I'm a nice person, or any other one of us are, and they go, oh, well, come on, John, it's just you. You can come on in and look at this. We are sunk. Those machines are decertified. And I'm not answering to the taxpayers of Cumberland County for, you know what, you need to pay for a new machine because we were just going to be nice and skirt the law so that you could see them. It's just not going to work that way. And so legislative fix is the way to handle every piece of this, every piece of it.
Still kind of like the thumb in the inkwell method for the person.
Bethany, the paper ballots that are created by the machines, correct?
Correct. And in fact, like I said, when they're used in a recount, they're counted by a different method. So, yeah.
The latest iteration of court findings, state guidance, et cetera. What ballots are currently slated to be segregated out?
Currently undated or misdated ballots need to be kept separate for now.
So the ruling by the court was that we are segregating. Of course, we are going to.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
I think it might be helpful for the record if she told us how many segregated ballots we had in the primary. That puts a little focus on it.
Oh goodness, you're gonna make me think back to the primary when my brain's on this election. I believe if I recall, it was less than 20. It was like 15 or 16, something like that. Yeah.
So it was not a large number at all.
No, now there were a lot less ballots, though. We only had about 14,000 or so returned last time, I think 12 to 14,000. So this time, obviously, there's a lot more ballots and a lot more interest, but yes. Yep.
additional?
I just want to make one comment to Jane there about the legislative. It's the commissioners that accept the machines or not. Other counties got rid of their machines. Fulton County's one of them. They're being sued by the state right now because of decertifying the machine because they get into them, found out there was compromise. Just wanted to point that out there, just right up the road here, Fulton County. Did you?
Yeah. So I will just say, obviously, I am in contact with all the directors and all the counties. Nothing was ever founded by that court case. In fact, it's still going through the courts. So nothing was proven yet that there was anything wrong with the machines. The reason why they were decertified was because they let a third party come in and touch the machines, which is not allowed. So that automatically decertified them. And in fact, they leased more from the exact same company, the exact same type of machine, so that they could move forward in the primary after they were decertified. So they're using the same equipment that they did previous. And that court case has not been solved. Or resolved, I should say, not solved. So.
The gentleman had his hand up earlier. So could you?
Richard Snyder, Mechanicsburg, retired constable. I really enjoyed that. And I also want to thank the folks at the election office. When I dropped off my mail-in ballot, it was very nice to see a sheriff there and watching over something very precious to us. Now, when it comes to things such as the Department of State, my mom told me if you can't say something nice, don't say anything. This is what I've observed over the years is we have a lot in Pennsylvania to be proud of. That's not one. But on the I'm sorry, coming back from a cold and from a fog cast, so I'm still working in herniated mode here. But as far as the non-verified ballots, there's no curing on those done when they come back. At least not currently, until they verify, until the actual person with the who requested it gets to have input. I mean, there's no proactive curing of ballots. We're just waiting, other than the letter goes out, come back and verify.
You're talking, so I think we're confusing. Are we talking about the letter that was sent to the Secretary of State? Is that what you're talking about? Or what are we talking about? Non-dated ballots?
The non-dated and non-verified.
Yeah, they're just set aside.
They're
Yep, just
okay.
like the court said.
And
Yep, they're just set aside.
Okay, and they'll
Yep.
be there until.
Who knows, whether there's more court cases or whatever.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, well, that's just probably the 6 days is what they're estimated will take to deal with.
So that's referring to people who did not have the correct identifying information. So they have until 6 days after to do that, but that's not the dated ballots. That's a different thing.
I think most of them.
Yeah.
Part of their PennDOT versus their social security 4-digit.
Right.
And that's the majority of them.
But that's not the undated ballots. That's a separate
Correct.
issue.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
yep.
Just what, like I said, I'm.
No, that's okay. No, it's all very confusing. I know.
Was another one, I lost it now. Sorry, but, and it really did appreciate the effort that you take to make sure that the ballots are. No, I don't know about chain of custody on that, but that's a whole nother issue.
Next meeting. Let me first recognize this lady back here. I don't think she has had a chance to speak. So.
Yeah, I'm Cheryl Parsons from the Borough of Carlisle. And I would just like to say that a 10% versus 2%, in my estimation, is not going to allay anybody's fears or mistrust. And it's going to cost a lot of money and take a lot of time. And I agree with the gentleman who said educate and let people know more what is being done so that we can trust our systems. I'm a retired educator and I learned a lot today. And I feel more confident now by the things I've heard, and I think if more people hear about it, there will be less mistrust.
I would hope anybody who's so inclined, if you have individuals who ask you about this, refer them to the YouTube webcast that we have, because they will get value out of this just as much as you have. Okay, we're good to go. Of course, thank all of you for being here today, taking time out of your schedule. But Mr. Cobb did want to have I'll give you this.
Real short. One is a question for Bethany regarding the unverified that was handed the Secretary of State or the Department of State's letter on. How many, obviously the number of not verified, unverified is not accurate. Right now, that's clear. How many of those actually exist in Cumberland County?
Applications that were not
Not
verified, they've all been verified.
Oh, everyone?
Yeah, and it's actually a pretty quick process. That's why, again, when I read that letter from the representative there, I was very confused about all of it because none of it's accurate in how things are processed. So if we get an application from someone and they're, they don't have the correct information on it, they don't have the identifying information, we mail it back, we highlight the section they need to fill out, they send that back. And if they do or they don't, I mean, that's on them, of course.
Sure.
And then, so I don't have a number because that's what we do with them. We send them back and say, hey, we need this information.
They're all
And
verified, really? at
yes,
this
yeah, we would not send out a ballot. Yeah.
Do you cure any of them? Like if I put down WM instead of William or something, or no, you let them deal with that?
You mean on the application?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so on the application, they need to have it filled out as completely as possible. Now, if someone puts, Mary A. Smith and their name's Mary Ann Smith, we'll be able to still find them registered by date of birth and their identifying information. So that's okay. But, yeah, if you just give me J. Smith, that's going to be difficult to figure out.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Laszlo, you're the final word.
Thank you. If I may put you on the spot, you've all heard a lot of proposals, a lot of thoughts. What are going to be your action items as commissioners to respond to some of the items brought up?
Oh, I could start that. I mean, we've heard a lot here, some of which I think we, through our investigations, have essentially been able to discount, candidly. So lots of accusations, look at the facts available to us. Some of the things don't hold up. You get new information all the time. We have an obligation to check it out. Bethany's been exceptional at that, carving out time that she really doesn't have to do it. So I think try to be as responsive as possible. We want to be transparent. We want people to trust the system. And I think now, given what's been suggested, there are a number of things. There is a cost to it. In my world, I always look at cost benefit analysis. So I have to think about what is the benefit of doing additional work over and above what we do? Where's the disconnect? Why would 3 precincts be better than, or why would 13 precincts be better than 3 precincts or whatever? Is there a marginal gain to that, given what we have to invest in it? What's our level of confidence that we as decision makers have in what's already being done? So, I mean, that's a process for me. Everybody has their own way of approaching that. So, the idea of additional precincts being added is interesting. I know the other counties are supposedly doing it. So, I would not discount it automatically, but I have to tell you, I'm not sure the case has been made sufficiently to me to go that path. I'm not ruling anything out. I think there will probably be discussion, after we've had a chance to digest some of this, and there may be a decision to move forward with something or other. But it is a collective decision, and we're not really in a position, I think, to give you anything other than a gut reaction to.
The two of us brought up the same thing: public education or getting the word out. That would be something that I think everyone agrees on.
Well, we've been really trying to push out a lot of information, and our communications director here, she's been, Samantha Krebs, she's been excellent at advising us on how we can, effectively get information out to voters. And as mentioned earlier, we are putting this up on the webcast. I encourage you to tell all your friends if they have questions, either participate in the next meeting or, come back and listen to what's occurred today. And a lot of them will probably find their questions answered.
May I, Commissioner?
Please, yeah.
A lot of information that we have updated on the election webpage is how to vote, how to do your mail-in ballot. The transparency has increased, and we have a bountiful amount of information on the election website. So I do encourage you all to go. And if there is a question, you can always call us. However, there are a lot of subjects that people that have asked questions here that are on there. Just to let you know.
It might as well answer your question as well. I think educating the public is certainly something we all agree on. As Sam just mentioned, I think we do quite a bit now, but for this election, maybe after this election, we do formalize some type of campaign to address that. But I want to make one of the problems here with this mistrust is all the misinformation that's out there about these voting machines that some people take as gospel. It's all garbage, voting machines, as far as I'm concerned in this county, I have no desire to go to a full paper process. I just could not do that. So I hope I answered your question.
And I'll answer the question, and I really hold firm in this. These things need a legislative fix. And that's it. We follow the process, we follow the law. And I believe that anytime we start deviating from the law, we put the residents and the taxpayers and the voters of Cumberland County at risk.
I think we're going to, Mr. Steiner, if you can make a really brief summary.
Into the category of we're not part of the solution, we're part of the problem, and we already have enough part of the problem everywhere. There is no expiration date on my constable oath of office or my Cub Scout and Boy Scout Scoutmaster, and I guess there's no expiration date on your guys. So if Bethany needs any help on the 9th counting or dealing with something, have people who've taken their oath and still honor it, just in case you need somebody, you know my number, because I'll be working the case for the forward.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we do have some additional business to conduct here, so we need to move along. We have the item 4, which is the approval of the meeting minutes from our October 3 meeting of this year.
Move to approve the meeting minutes of October 3.
A second.
It's moved and seconded. All in favor, indicate by saying aye.
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 All right. Item 5, we have the discussion and approval of the pool workers,
Yes.
which I always invert.
Say that
every
5
time.
times fast, right?
So that is attached. Did you want to speak to that?
Yes, so this is the group of wonderful poll workers who will go anywhere we ask them to on election day to fill in the gaps, because as you can imagine, the closer we get, we do lose people, whether that's them being sick or things come up. So these are a list of individuals that I would need you to approve, so they are able to go to other precincts in the county.
Okay, we have the list at hand. It's, no, the county does not employ pool workers.
Yes.
Does anybody have any additional questions on that? Not, we'll entertain a motion.
I will move to approve the pool of poll workers.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, that brings us to director's updates. Is your voice holding out?
Yes, definitely. Thanks. So just a couple of quick things. Now that the deadline to apply for a mail-in and absentee ballot has passed, our total is 29,570 that have applied. We have received back so far 23,886 ballots. We are at an 81% return rate. So that is actually higher than the statewide average. We are doing well. People are getting their ballots. And then I just wanted to remind you, we do have additional hours for people to drop off their mail-in or absentee ballot. We are open tonight until 7 p.m. and then Saturday from 8 p.m. to 2 p.m. for ballot drop-off. Okay. And then the last thing, I just wanted to kind of reiterate our canvassing plan for Election Day. Normally we vote on that, but since now we have this grant, we're required to follow a certain way of canvassing. So we will begin the canvass of the mail-in and absentee ballots at 7 a.m. on election day, November 8th. And that's the pre-canvass. And then at 8 p.m., we will start the canvass of those ballots and we will continue until finished. So whatever that means, whatever that looks like. And then, of course, the polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. as well. So a lot of things happening that day.
A lot.
So that's all I have.
I think one of the benefits of this line of questioning that's going on is I think people are learning a lot of just how much goes into elections. That's a very technical, expensive, time-consuming process. So that's a silver lining for today. Okay. Do you have anything else?
That's all I have.
I asked just what the ratio of the 29,000 Republican versus Democrat? You have that?
Republicans who applied, 8,493. Democrats that applied, 17,408. And the rest are independent, nonpartisan, libertarian, and you name it.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. All right, so we have, that concludes your director updates. Okay, that's number 7. Moves us to 8. We had, I'm sorry, 7. So we have a request for executive session regarding pending litigation and security matters. Are we do need that? Yes, we do. Okay. All right, so we'll be moving into that at the conclusion of this. That brings us to number 8, which is other business. Anything not on the agenda that we need to measures?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Staff? No? Okay. In that case, entertain a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Stand adjourned.